Welcome, traveler of the stars. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like and share the story. The Vex Collective had ruled the galactic arm for 7,000 standard cycles. Their crystalline bodies floated through space in vessels of perfect geometry, their thoughts transmitted through quantum entanglement, their society built on pure logic and absolute order. They had witnessed the rise and fall of three lesser species, each following the predictable pattern of development: discovery, expansion, conflict, and either self-annihilation or assimilation. The Vex were the universe's custodians, pruning the garden of civilizations that grew too wild. High Observer Xyler adjusted its light-refracting membranes as the anomaly appeared on the observation deck. The data stream flickered impossible readings from a fledgling species on the third planet of a yellow dwarf system. Report. Xyler transmitted through the collective's network. Sub-observer Zora's crystalline form shimmered beside it. The species calls itself humanity. They've achieved interstellar travel through methods that defy our understanding of physics. Their ships appear to be improvisation. Xyler focused its sensory arrays on the human vessel approaching their perimeter. It was a patchwork of technologies, some advanced, others primitive. The hull bore scars of countless repairs. The engines pulsed with inconsistent energy, and the navigation array appeared to be constructed from repurposed mining equipment. They should not exist, Xyler transmitted. Their development timeline violates the natural progression. We detected their first radio transmissions merely 300 cycles ago. They should still be confined to their planetary system. Their propulsion method is inefficient yet effective. Zora replied, they appear to be converting matter directly to energy through a process that should destroy the vessel and its occupants. Yet they survive. The human ship transmitted a message, a chaotic burst of audio and visual information that the Vex system struggled to translate. When finally decoded, it revealed a species of soft, fragile bipeds with large brains and nervous systems that operated on chemical imbalances. They communicate through sound waves produced by vibrating membranes in their necks. Zora transmitted with what the closest Vex equivalent to astonishment would be. Their language is imprecise, filled with metaphor and emotional context. Xyler processed this information. They are illogical, emotional, inefficient. They will either destroy themselves or require our intervention. The Vex had seen this pattern before. The Prukathans had been similar, emotional, unpredictable. They had lasted only 200 cycles after achieving space travel before their internal conflicts led to nuclear self-annihilation. The Glorics had been more stable but had exhausted their resources through reckless expansion, requiring Vex intervention to prevent ecological collapse. But humanity was different. Their planet was a chaotic mixture of ecosystems, their societies divided by countless artificial boundaries, their technologies advancing at an impossible rate. Most concerning, they had discovered the Vex observation post and were actively seeking contact. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Wayfarer, her eyes fixed on the crystalline ship floating in the void before them. 30 years of deep space exploration had prepared her for many things, but nothing like this. Anything new from our transmission, Dr. Chen? She asked without turning from the viewport. Dr. Marcus Chen adjusted his headset. Still just that repeating mathematical sequence. Prime numbers, basic geometry, some physics equations. It's like they're testing our intelligence, or showing off theirs, Elena muttered. The alien vessel was unlike anything humanity had encountered. Perfectly symmetrical, composed of what appeared to be a single crystalline structure, it emitted no heat signature, no radiation, no visible means of propulsion. It simply existed in space, defying physics as humanity understood it. They've been observing us for a while, said Tactical Officer James Mitchell from his station. Longer than we've been observing them, apparently. Elena nodded. The discovery had been shocking enough. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. But learning that these beings had been watching Earth for centuries was terrifying. Every major event in human history, every war, every scientific breakthrough, every step towards space exploration, had they been watching it all. Send another transmission, Elena ordered. This time, include something they might not expect. Music. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Music? Are you sure that's a good idea? We've tried mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology. We've sent them our greatest scientific achievements. They've responded with condescending lessons in basic principles. Maybe it's time to show them something else about us. Marcus nodded and began encoding a selection of human music into the transmission. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, traditional African drumming, Japanese koto music, American jazz, Brazilian bossa nova, a collection spanning cultures and centuries. As the transmission traveled through space, the crystalline ship seemed to shimmer more intensely. For the first time it moved, rotating slowly to face the wayfarer directly. "They're responding," Marcus announced, his voice filled with excitement. "It's complex, more than just mathematics this time." On the main screen, patterns of light and sound began to form. It was music, but unlike anything human ears had ever perceived. Mathematical precision combined with emotional resonance, patterns within patterns, harmonies that seemed to transcend three-dimensional space. "They're not just communicating," Elena whispered. "They're creating something with us." The Vex Collective was in turmoil. The human transmission had introduced something their logical framework couldn't process: art. For 7,000 cycles, the Vex had pursued knowledge, efficiency, order. They had cataloged millions of species, understood the fundamental laws of the universe, achieved a form of immortality through consciousness transfer. But they had never created art. The human's emotional communication contains mathematical patterns of unexpected complexity. High Observer Zyler transmitted to the collective. "Their music encodes physical laws we have yet to discover. They are illogical, yet their art reveals deeper truths than our science," Sub-Observer Zor replied. "Their emotional nature, which we dismissed as a weakness, appears to be a form of intelligence we cannot comprehend." The collective debated for 3 standard days, a record for their normally decisive consciousness. Some argued for immediate intervention, to study humanity more closely. Others advocated for isolation, to prevent contamination of Vex purity with human emotion. In the end, they reached a compromise: limited contact, under controlled conditions. A meeting would be arranged, on neutral ground. Captain Elena Rodriguez reviewed the transmission from the crystalline ship. "They want to meet, on the moon of the 4th planet, in this system." "Is it safe?" James asked. "Nothing about this is safe," Lena replied. "But when has that ever stopped us?" The meeting was arranged for 7 days later, giving both sides time to prepare. The Vex sent detailed specifications for the meeting location, environmental conditions, and communication protocols. Humanity responded with preparations of their own. Elena selected a small team for the first contact mission. Dr. Marcus Shen, linguist and xenobiologist, Commander Sarah O'Brien, security chief, and Father Michael Torres, a Jesuit priest and philosopher who had spent his life contemplating humanity's place in the cosmos. "I don't understand why we're bringing a priest," James said during the final briefing. "Because we're not just representing humanity's science and technology," Elena replied. "We're representing everything we are, our beliefs, our hopes, our questions. Father Torres represents our spiritual dimension." The priest smiled gently. "Or perhaps I'm just along in case we need to perform an exorcism." The meeting location was a vast crater on the moon of a gas giant planet. The Vex had already arrived, their crystalline ship hovering silently above the surface. As the human shuttle descended, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and terror. This was it, the moment that would change everything. The shuttle landed softly on the crater floor. The 4 crew members stepped out onto the gray surface, their boots leaving distinct prints in the fine dust. Before them, 3 crystalline beings materialized, their forms shifting and refracting the light of the distant sun. "We are the Vexa Collective," a voice resonated in their minds. Not through their helmet communicators, but directly in their consciousness. "We have observed your species for 300 of your years." Elena stepped forward. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth Alliance vessel. Wayfarer, we come in peace." The Vex beings shimmered. "Your concept of peace is interesting. Your species has engaged in 1,847 recorded wars in the last 300 years. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your planet. You have polluted your atmosphere, extinguished thousands of species, and divided yourselves into arbitrary groups based on minor physical variations." Father Torres stepped forward. "We have also created music that expresses the joy of existence, art that captures the beauty of the cosmos, and philosophies that explore the nature of consciousness. We have cured diseases, fed the hungry, and reached for the stars despite our limitations." The Vex beings shifted, their light patterns changing. Your emotional nature is both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. It drives you to create and to destroy, to love and to hate, to reach for the heavens and to drag each other down. We are what we are, Elena said. Flawed, yes, but also capable of growth, of change, of becoming better than we were. The Vex transmitted a complex thought pattern that their translators struggled to interpret. It seemed to be a mixture of curiosity, concern, and something approaching fear. Your unpredictability makes you a threat to the order of the galaxy, the Vex transmitted. Your emotional nature, your rapid technological advancement, your refusal to follow the established patterns of civilization development, all these factors suggest that your species will either achieve greatness or cause catastrophic destruction. We don't want to cause destruction, Elena said. We want to learn, to explore, to understand our place in the universe. The Vex beings seemed to confer among themselves, their light patterns growing more complex and intense. After a moment of silence, they transmitted again. The collective has reached a decision. We will allow humanity limited access to the galactic community. Under our supervision, you will be granted access to certain technologies, restricted to specific regions of space, and monitored closely. Any deviation from the established parameters will result in corrective measures. Elena's heart sank. This wasn't partnership. It was probation. Humanity was being treated like a child that couldn't be trusted. We appreciate your offer, Elena said carefully, but humanity doesn't respond well to restrictions. We learn through exploration, through making mistakes, and correcting them. We need the freedom to grow. The Vex beings brightened, their light patterns becoming more agitated. Your emotional response is predictable. Your species resists authority, even when it is for your own good. This is precisely why supervision is necessary. Father Torres stepped forward again. With respect, you've been observing us for 300 years. You've seen our wars, our conflicts, our mistakes. But have you also seen how we've learned from them, how we've formed global alliances, how we've begun to address our environmental problems, how we've reached out to the stars despite our divisions? The Vex beings shifted again, their light patterns becoming more contemplative. Your capacity for growth is indeed remarkable, but so is your capacity for self-destruction. The collective cannot risk allowing an unpredictable, emotional species to disrupt the galactic order. The meeting ended with an uneasy understanding. The Vex would grant humanity limited access to the galaxy, but under strict supervision, humanity would be allowed to explore, but within defined boundaries. It was a compromise that satisfied neither side. As the human shuttle ascended from the moon's surface, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. The Vex saw humanity as a problem to be managed, a threat to be contained. But they didn't understand the most fundamental thing about human nature. When told there are places we cannot go, things we cannot do, limits we cannot cross, that's precisely when we become most determined to prove otherwise. The Vex collective processed the meeting data with growing concern. The humans had been more resistant to supervision than anticipated. Their emotional responses, their arguments about freedom and growth, their refusal to accept limitations, all these behaviors fell outside the established patterns of developing civilizations. The humans are an anomaly, High Observer Zeiler transmitted to the collective. They do not follow the natural progression. They must be contained more strictly. Sub-Observer Zora transmitted a counter-argument. Containment may provoke the very behavior we seek to prevent. Perhaps a different approach is needed. The collective debated for days, their crystalline forms glowing with intense light patterns, as they processed the unprecedented situation. In the end, they reached a consensus. Humanity would be allowed limited freedom, but with clear boundaries and consequences for crossing them. The Vex transmitted their decision to the Wayfarer, along with detailed maps of permitted exploration zones, technological exchange protocols, and behavioral guidelines. The response from the human ship was immediate and unexpected. Instead of accepting the terms, the Wayfarer transmitted a single message: "We respectfully decline." The Vex collective was stunned. No species had ever declined their terms before. The Procathans had accepted, then violated them, leading to their destruction. The Glorks had accepted, then struggled with the limitations, requiring intervention. But no one had simply declined. They do not understand the consequences, Zahler transmitted. Or perhaps they understand them perfectly, Zora replied, and have chosen to reject them anyway. The Vex ships moved to encircle the Wayfarer, their crystalline forms forming a barrier of light and energy. The message was clear: accept the terms or face the consequences. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Wayfarer, her face reflected in the view screen showing the crystalline ship surrounding them. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders. They've given us an ultimatum, James reported. Accept their terms or they'll disable our ship and take us into custody. Elena nodded slowly. They don't understand us. They think we're like the other species they've encountered. They think we'll eventually give in, accept their limitations, fall in line. She turned to face her crew. But we're not like other species. We're human. We don't accept limitations. We don't stay in the lines. We don't follow the rules when the rules are wrong. Dr. Chen looked concerned. What are you saying, Captain? I'm saying that sometimes you have to make a stand. Sometimes you have to show the universe that humanity won't be contained, won't be controlled, won't accept limitations on our freedom to explore, to learn, to grow. Helena took a deep breath. Mr. Mitchell, prepare to execute Emergency Protocol Omega. James's eyes widened. Captain, that's never been tested. It could destroy the ship. It could also show them that humanity will not be contained, Elena replied. Prepare the protocol. As James worked at his console, Elena opened a channel to the Vex ships. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth Alliance vessel, Wayfarer. We respectfully decline your terms. We will not accept limitations on our freedom to explore the galaxy. We will not be contained. The Vex response was immediate and predictable. Your defiance is illogical. Accept the terms or face the consequences. We face consequences our entire existence, Elena transmitted back. We faced wars, plagues, disasters, and our own self-destructive tendencies. We've survived them all. We'll survive this too. She nodded to James. Execute Protocol Omega. The Wayfarer began to transform. Sections of the hull reconfigured. Energy conduits glowed with intense light, and the ship's engines began to pulse with an unusual rhythm. The Emergency Protocol Omega was a theoretical concept, developed by humanity's most radical thinkers, a way to convert the entire ship into a temporary wormhole, allowing instantaneous travel to an unknown location. It had never been tested, never proven possible, never anything more than a desperate last resort, until now. The Vex Collective watched in disbelief as the human ship began to tear a hole in the fabric of space-time. The energy readings were off the scale, the physics impossible, the outcome unpredictable. They're destroying themselves, Eller transmitted. Or they're doing something we never considered possible, Zora replied. The Wayfarer vanished in a flash of light, leaving behind only residual energy patterns and the echo of a transmission that would haunt the Vex Collective for cycles to come. We'll be back, and we'll bring friends. The Vex Collective processed what had happened with growing concern. The humans had not been destroyed. They had escaped. They had demonstrated a capability that defied Vex understanding, a willingness to risk everything rather than accept limitations. The humans are more dangerous than we anticipated, Siller transmitted. They must be contained before they disrupt the galactic order. The Vex ships began to spread out, establishing a perimeter around the region where the Wayfarer had disappeared. They would find the humans, and this time there would be no escape. But what the Vex didn't know was that the Wayfarer's transmission had been received by another human ship, the Endeavor, which had been exploring a nearby sector, and the Endeavor had transmitted the message further, to other human ships, to Earth, to the growing network of human colonies scattered across the stars. The message was simple: the Vex have offered us limitations. We have refused. We have shown them that humanity will not be contained. Now they hunt us, but we will not hide. We will explore, we will learn, we will grow, and we will return, not as supplicants asking for permission, but as equals claiming our place among the stars. The message spread like wildfire through the human network, igniting a passion that had been dormant for too long. The Vex had wanted to contain humanity, to limit their growth, to manage their development. Instead, they had unleashed something far more dangerous, a united humanity, determined to claim its place in the galaxy, no matter the cost. The Vex Collective had encountered many species in their 7,000 cycles of stewardship. They had guided some, contained others, and watched as most followed the predictable patterns of development. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. The prophets of the Vex had spoken of humanity's extinction, of the need to contain this unpredictable species before it could disrupt the galactic order. But the prophets had forgotten one crucial fact. Legends don't die, they return. And humanity was just getting started. The Vex Collective recalibrated their sensors for the third time in as many cycles, each scan returning the same impossible result. The human vessel had not merely escaped, it had evolved. The energy signature of the Wayfarer's departure had left behind a residual pattern that defied Vex understanding, a ripple in spacetime that continued to expand outward, carrying with it fragments of human consciousness, emotion, and something the Vex had no category for: hope. High Observer Xyler floated in the observation chamber, its crystalline form refracting the light of distant stars into patterns of growing concern. The humans have violated the natural order. Their escape was not merely physical but metaphysical. They have torn the fabric of reality and emerged, changed. Sub-Observer Zora shimmered beside it, its light patterns unusually erratic. The transmission they left behind continues to propagate through the quantum network. Other human vessels are responding. They are converging on this location from multiple sectors. The Vex had prepared for many scenarios: human surrender, human resistance, human self-destruction. They had not prepared for human transformation. Dispatch the containment fleet, Zeller transmitted. All 7 formations. Establish a perimeter around this sector. No human vessel enters or leaves without authorization. The Vex fleet moved with perfect precision. Crystalline vessels sliding through space in mathematical formations that had contained dozens of lesser species over millennia. They would surround the human expansion, limit its growth, and gradually bring it under control. It was a strategy that had never failed. Until now. Captain Elena Rodriguez materialized on the bridge of the Wayfarer, her form momentarily unstable before solidifying. The emergency protocol Omega had worked, but not as expected. The ship hadn't just traveled through space. It had traveled through dimensions, emerging in a state between matter and energy, between physical and quantum. Status report, she said, her voice echoing strangely in the transformed bridge. Dr. Marcus Chen floated nearby, his body also in a state of flux. We're different. The protocol didn't just move us, it changed us. We exist partially in quantum space, partially in physical space. The ship too. Commander Sarah O'Brien phased through a console before stabilizing. Weapon systems are offline. So are shields, engines, pretty much everything we're used to. But we've gained something else. On the main view screen, space appeared different. Not just the stars and nebulae they were used to seeing, but the connections between them, the energy flows, the quantum entanglements that linked every point in the universe. They could see the Vex ships not as physical objects, but as concentrations of ordered energy, as patterns in the cosmic fabric. We can see them, Elena whispered, not just with our eyes, but with our minds. We can perceive their thoughts, their intentions, their fears. Father Torres appeared beside her, his form glowing with an inner light. We've become something more than human, yet still fundamentally human. Our consciousness has expanded, but our essence remains. The Wayfarer had changed, but so had its crew. They had risked everything to escape containment, and in doing so had transcended their limitations. They were no longer just humans exploring space. They were something new, something the Vex had never encountered, a species that could evolve in real time, that could adapt to any challenge, that could transform limitation into opportunity. The other human ships are responding to our transmission, Dr. Chen reported. They're coming, but the Vex are establishing a containment perimeter. Elena nodded slowly. Then we'll have to show them that humanity cannot be contained. Not anymore. The Vex containment fleet moved into position, 7 formations of crystalline vessels creating an impenetrable barrier around the sector. They had contained rebellious species before, using a combination of superior technology, strategic positioning, and psychological warfare. The humans would realize the futility of resistance, accept their limitations, and gradually assimilate into the galactic order under Vex guidance. But the humans were not following the established patterns. The first human vessel to arrive was the Endeavor, a research ship similar to the Wayfarer but smaller, less advanced. It approached the Vex perimeter and transmitted a message. We come in peace. We seek to understand, not to fight. The Vex response was predictable. Human vessels are restricted to this sector until further notice. Turn back or face the consequences. The Endeavor transmitted again. We cannot turn back. We have received the Wayfarer's transmission. We have felt the change in the cosmic fabric. We are here to learn, to grow, to evolve with our fellow humans. The Vex ships tightened their formation, energy weapons charging. This is your final warning. Turn back or be destroyed. For a moment, it seemed the Endeavor would comply, its engines beginning to power down. But then something unexpected happened. The ship began to transform, its hull reconfiguring, its energy signature changing, its very structure shifting from physical to quantum. The Vex watched in disbelief as the Endeavor phased through their containment barrier. Appearing on the other side, its form now as unstable and transformed as the Wayfarers. They've learned from the Wayfarer's transmission, Zealer transmitted with growing alarm. They're evolving, adapting, transforming in real time. This is not natural. More human ships began to arrive, each approaching the Vex perimeter, each warned to turn back, each refusing, each transforming and passing through the barrier as if it didn't exist. The Vex had established what should have been an impenetrable defense, but the humans were adapting, evolving, finding ways around limitations that should have been absolute. This is not containment, Zora transmitted. This is evolution. We are witnessing the emergence of a new form of life, born from human consciousness and quantum reality. The Vex Collective faced an unprecedented dilemma. They could destroy the human ships, but doing so would be to destroy a potentially revolutionary form of consciousness. They could retreat, but doing so would be to admit failure, to allow an unpredictable species to disrupt the galactic order. Or they could adapt, to learn from the humans, to evolve alongside them. The choice would define the future of the galaxy. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched as more human ships arrived and transformed, each joining the growing fleet of quantum-enhanced vessels on the far side of the Vex perimeter. The humans were adapting, evolving, finding ways around the limitations imposed on them. They're learning from us, Dr. Chen said, his form stabilizing as he grew more accustomed to the quantum state. Each ship that transforms adds to our collective understanding, to our shared consciousness. We're becoming a network, Commander O'Brien added. Not just of ships, but of minds, of consciousness, of possibility. Father Torres floated nearby, his inner light growing brighter. This is what humanity has always been capable of, not just adapting to our environment, but transcending it, not just evolving over generations, but in moments, not just surviving limitations, but transforming them into strengths. The Wayfarer and the growing fleet of transformed human vessels formed a circle, their quantum consciousness merging, their combined energy creating something new in the fabric of space-time, a bridge between dimensions, a pathway to new possibilities, a declaration that humanity would not be contained. The Vex are debating their response, Elena said, her consciousness expanding to perceive the crystalline ships, not as enemies but as fellow travelers in the cosmic journey. They're faced with a choice: destroy us, retreat, or evolve with us. Which will they choose? Dr. Chen asked. Elena considered the question carefully. The Vex have been the custodians of the galaxy for 7,000 cycles. They've guided species, contained threats, maintained order, but order without growth becomes stagnation. Control without freedom becomes tyranny. Knowledge without wisdom becomes meaningless. She turned to face her crew. We need to show them another way. Not by force, but by example. Not by defiance, but by invitation. Not by proving we're stronger, but by demonstrating we're wiser. The Wayfarer transmitted a message across the quantum network, not just to the human ships, but to the Vex as well. We do not seek conflict. We seek understanding. We do not wish to disrupt the galactic order. We wish to contribute to its growth. We offer not defiance, but partnership. Not chaos, but a new kind of order. One that includes evolution, change, and the possibility that even the oldest civilizations might have something to learn. The Vex Collective processed the human transmission with growing confusion. The humans were not behaving as expected. They were not seeking revenge for the containment attempt, not demanding concessions, not using their new capabilities to assert dominance. Instead, they were offering partnership, understanding, growth. This is not the response we anticipated, Zeller transmitted. The humans have gained abilities that surpass our own, yet they do not seek to use them against us. They have evolved, not just physically but metaphysically, Sora replied. Their consciousness has expanded to include empathy, understanding, wisdom. They see us not as enemies but as potential partners. The Vex had guided many species through their development, but they had never been guided themselves. They had taught many civilizations the laws of the universe, but they had never considered that there might be laws they had yet to discover. They had established order throughout the galaxy, but they had never questioned whether their order was the only possible one. The prophets spoke of humanity's extinction, Solar transmitted slowly. Perhaps they misunderstood. Perhaps what they foresaw was not the end of humanity, but the end of humanity as it was. Perhaps what they feared was not human destruction, but human transformation. The Vex fleet began to change formation, the crystalline vessels moving from a containment pattern to an open circle, a gesture of invitation rather than restriction. The collective has reached a decision, Solar transmitted to the human fleet. We offer what you offer. Partnership, understanding, growth. We acknowledge that even the oldest civilizations might have something to learn. The response from the human fleet was immediate and overwhelming, a wave of gratitude, understanding, and welcome that flowed across the quantum network, not as words but as pure emotion, as shared consciousness, as the beginning of a new relationship between species. Captain Elena Rodriguez felt the shift in the cosmic fabric, the movement from conflict to cooperation, from limitation to possibility. The Vex had sought to contain humanity, to limit its growth, to manage its development, but humanity had responded not with defiance but with transformation, not with resistance but with evolution, not with conflict but with the offer of partnership. We've done it, she whispered, her form glowing with quantum energy. We've shown the galaxy that humanity's strength lies not just in our technology or our intelligence, but in our capacity for growth, for change, for becoming more than we were. Father Taurus floated beside her, his inner light merging with hers. We've always been travelers, explorers, seekers. Now we've discovered that the greatest frontier is not space but consciousness, not the stars but ourselves. The Wayfarer and the transformed human vessels move forward, passing through the Vex formation not as enemies but as partners, not as conquerors but as collaborators. The Vex ships open their crystalline structures, revealing chambers of light and energy, invitations to share, to learn, to grow together. The galaxy would never be the same. The Vex had been the custodians of order for 7,000 cycles, but now they would become partners in evolution. Humanity had been the unpredictable newcomers, the emotional species, the chaotic element in the mathematical perfection of the cosmos. But now they would become teachers of transformation, guides to new possibilities, pioneers of consciousness. The prophets of the Vex had spoken of humanity's extinction, of the need to contain this unpredictable species before it could disrupt the galactic order. But the prophets had forgotten one crucial fact. Legends don't die, they return. And humanity had returned, not as the species the Vex had sought to contain, but as something new, something evolved, something that would transform not just humanity but the entire galaxy. As the human and Vex vessels moved forward together, exploring new dimensions of space and consciousness, a new chapter began in the story of the galaxy, a chapter written not in the language of mathematics or logic, but in the language of growth, evolution, and the endless possibility that comes when different species join together to become more than they were alone.